Thanks everyone for joining, for coming today. We really appreciate the turnout here in the room and glad to have everyone online. My name is Marshall Brown. I work with the carbon pricing global practice here at the Global Green Growth Institute. I'm really happy to start kick off the session today on building capacities and leveling the playing field in Article 6. I would like to go ahead and welcome our opening remarks from Dr. Frank Reisberman, who is the Director General of GGGI. Please.
Thank you, Marshall. And yes, this is a session from a number of people who are deep experts in Article 6 already, Marshall said. Carbon credits, really, right? For people. I think we have to recognize there will be a lot of people online who are interested. Actually, Mona predicted that this might be the session with the highest number of people participating because a lot of people are interested, but also a lot of people don't quite know what it is, what it means, or what even leveling the playing field is, right? And I would say for those of you who are not in CPU or Article 6 experts, and when you say carbon credits or offsets, what do you think of? Well, I don't know what you think of, but if you've just read the newspapers the last year or so, there has been a ton of very negative publicity around carbon credits, right? So why are we even engaged in this? And it's not a rhetorical question. When we first proposed that we would start a carbon pricing unit, we got GGI staff saying, we shouldn't be involved in this. This is not serious. This is a reputational risk. All right. I think we entered into it because we believe that there is actually a real opportunity to do really good stuff that shouldn't be a reputational risk. But on the other hand, it is clear that particularly around the voluntary carbon market and particularly around these millions of tons of carbon credits that have been sold to somehow solve the climate crisis by planting trees. There have been a lot of projects that have been questioned by The Guardian and other very solid newspapers. So we should at least be aware of that, and we should be able to explain why we believe that what we are doing is not a reputational risk and is actually really in the interest of our both buying and selling members of GGI. And to me, the simplest example is still that when we have a country like Korea, where they have made the commitment to reduce emissions by 40% by 2030, you know, the same that the whole world should be doing. And in the global stocktake, we see that it's way not happening. And a country like Korea will be struggling. Frankly, when the parliament adopted its climate act, they said the maximum they could do was 32% by 2030. The president still felt we had to commit 40%. And we know that that difference would only be achievable in the mind of most Korean policymakers if they're able to have international transactions. So that's one perspective of selling countries. And yes, I think carbon prices, it is quite realistic that the cost of additional reductions of emissions in Korea would soon be $100 a ton, even higher. And a lot of experts have said, if we don't get to carbon markets that are operating such prices, we're not going to get to 1.5 degrees. On the other hand, in countries like Sri Lanka or Nepal or Cambodia, where the domestic requirements to reduce emissions are much lower, it's quite realistic that there could be costs of an additional reduction that are more along the lines of $10 a ton. So if a country like that could make an agreement with Korea to buy ITMOs at $50 a ton, you know, hey, I don't have to negotiate these prices, so I can say these numbers without any of the reservations that the people who do negotiate them really have. But then it's obvious that there should be a possibility for mutual benefit, right? Korea should be able to buy ITMOs at prices that are much lower than what it costs in Korea. And countries that's where the real cost of reduction is $10 a ton, if they can sell those at 50, they can do the real reduction, not paper reduction, real reduction, and still have $40 to increase resilience or use those resources to have climate action beyond those initial reductions. So I think we need to have some real belief that those kind of transactions who are really in the mutual interest of buyers and sellers are possible in the relatively near term. But it's also clear that if you take a country like Indonesia that has a pretty high requirement for its own NDC, decisions of what they can actually sell and at what prices are not at all easy or not at all obvious. So they do need, well, what do they need? They need a solid MRV so that they can demonstrate that reductions are really achieved, and they need a pretty sophisticated.
Nous avons besoin une capacité assez sophistiquée de pouvoir prendre des décisions sur ce sur quoi ils vendent et pour avoir des prix assez compréhensibles entre les acheteurs et les vendeurs. Des pays comme la Suède, par exemple, des pays comme la Corée. C'est une situation assez complexe. Mais nous avons essayé de monter une équipe qui travaille avec une douzaine de pays afin de mettre en place, de renforcer les capacités, de mettre en place le cadre légal et qu'on puisse se dire que tous les pays nous avons discuté des premiers avec des premiers contrats avec le Thaïlande sur les bus électriques. On est capable de mettre en place. Donc, éventuellement, personnellement, j'espère que nous serons capables de pouvoir mettre en place des projets comme
other blue economy-based carbon credits. Those are obviously not the easiest,
ou d'autres.
right? Those are the
C'est vraiment pas les plus faciles, c'est vraiment les plus difficiles parce qu'il y a un besoin de beaucoup d'études. Mais j'espère que dans le futur proche, nous pourrons travailler avec ses membres, avec d'autres pays comme la Suède. Je considère cela de mettre en place des contrats qui seront dans l'intérêt mutuel afin d'accélérer l'action climatique. C'est la seule raison que nous sommes dans ce business. Nous avons de très bons exemples des pays comme l'Éthiopie, où à travers le projet GIS aide l'Éthiopie à avoir des parcs industriels verts. La première annonce que nous avons faite n'était pas assez commerciale pour attirer les investisseurs, mais la deuxième annonce que nous avons faite pour de projets potentiels en Éthiopie et en Suède, ces crédits carbone vont faire une différence pour des petits projets ou des endroits qui commencent à devenir plus attirants au point de vue commercial. Nous avons été très occupés aussi à mettre en place un business model qui pourrait aider tous les différentes parties prenantes, qui pourrait intégrer toutes les parties prenantes dans ce type de projet. Alors, pour GGI et pour plusieurs de nos pays membres, ce n'est pas seulement le crédit carbone, mais il y a un lien direct avec toutes les activités que nous menons ensemble. Les activités à plus grand niveau, la mise en place d'infrastructures, des solutions où les crédits carbone peuvent vraiment faire une différence dans la mise en place de l'action climatique. C'est ma vision. Nous espérons que les personnes dans ce panel pourront vous montrer que nous allons étape par étape afin de rendre cette réalité verte. Et je suis sûr que toutes les personnes que vous allez entendre seront engagées dans ce domaine. Et nous savons qu'il y a plus de personnes dans nos pays membres qui n'ont pas la connaissance pour décider si c'est quelque chose pour eux, mais ils sont quand même intéressés par ce projet. Voilà pourquoi nous avons mis en place cette session, afin qu'on puisse partager vos différentes expériences et afin que nous puissions faire en sorte que ce soit possible avec la mise en contact avec d'autres partenaires. C'est un peu ce que nous attendons de cette session, pas de pression, mais nous espérons que ce sera une zone qui pourra mettre en valeur les réalisations et jouer un rôle assez positif à avancer des zones qui pourront accélérer la croissance verte et l'action climatique. Merci beaucoup d'être là. C'était mon allocution d'ouverture et à partager à nos collègues pourquoi nous faisons cela à GGI afin de trouver des solutions. Alors, je vais laisser la parole si elle veut peut-être partager nos objectifs. Nous avons des ambitions très, très élevées pour l'intérêt général. Merci beaucoup. Alors, merci beaucoup, Franck, pour votre allocution d'ouverture. Je voudrais seulement aller un peu sur le format de la session. Nous avons deux parties à notre session. Durant la première heure, nous allons discuter de le cadre logique de la gouvernance. Ensuite, nous allons commencer cette première heure avec des présentations d'experts. Benjamin Heras, qui fait partie de Carbon Limit. Ensuite, nous avons une discussion de panel avec nos amis de Sri Lanka, de Suède et de Zambie. Si nous pourrons fixer quelques problèmes techniques, il sera modéré par notre équipe ici. Ensuite, je vais passer ensuite la parole à M. Benjamin, qui doit être en ligne. M. Benjamin Heras, de Carbon Limits. Bonjour à tous, est-ce que vous pouvez voir mon écran? Oui, nous pouvons voir, M. Benjamin. Vous avez la parole. Tellement bonjour de Oslo, à Norvège. Merci beaucoup de voir des visages assez familiers. C'est vraiment très bien d'être. Nous aurions aimé être en présentiel avec vous, mais nous espérons avoir des opportunités dans d'autres forums ou dans d'autres sessions. Mais merci beaucoup de me donner la parole. Alors, je vais juste prendre quelques minutes pour essayer de débuter cette discussion de panélistes, pour essayer de vous faire comprendre ce que nous essayons de faire ici. Alors, je vais aussi prendre quelques mots de l'allocution de Franck pour dire que nous essayons d'avoir plus de clarité sur les différentes définitions, sur les crédits carbone et comment nous essayons de soutenir certains pays afin qu'ils puissent mettre en place et organiser un document qui pourrait les aider à mettre en place cela dans les différentes activités des pays. Merci beaucoup pour la parole, merci beaucoup pour l'opportunité. Et nous sommes vraiment très contents de partager les différentes informations. Alors, je vais discuter sur ce sujet qui est le cadre logique de gouvernance. Je vais essayer de vous présenter qu'est-ce que c'est qu'un article. Le cadre logique de l'article 6. Nous avons des pays dans le monde qui ont développé leur propre article de gouvernance. Alors, nous allons peut-être partager quelques stratégies qui ont été développées de gouvernance développées par certains pays et l'implémentation de ce cadre logique. Et aussi présenter aussi ce que nous faites, ce que nous faisons brièvement avec GGI sur un projet qui s'appelle Carbon Limit, où nous soutenons les pays sur la mise en place de cette stratégie. Je vais vous donner plus de détails. Sans plus tarder, je voudrais commencer par vous expliquer quelques idées. Comment est-ce que nous pouvons définir le cadre logique de gouvernance de l'article 6? Alors, nous pouvons voir cela dans une perspective beaucoup plus grande. Quelles sont les choses les plus importantes à garder en tête? Nous lorsque nous parlons d'avoir notre cadre logique de gouvernance sur l'article 6. La première des choses, nous avons pensé que cela peut être dû à l'approche du pays sur l'article 6. C'est un document très important de haut niveau qui provient une idée de flexibilité. Ce ne sera pas quelque chose d'assez strict et déjà défini, mais c'est quelque chose qui pourrait avoir une sorte de flexibilité aux différents pays afin de pouvoir s'adapter à toutes ces solutions évolutives. Parce qu'il y a toujours de nouvelles décisions, de nouvelles solutions qui arrivent chaque année à la suite des sessions de COP. Aussi, nous devons avoir une réflexion sur les circonstances uniques du pays. Donc, il n'y a pas une solution ou un design particulier à suivre. Et c'est quelque chose que je pourrais développer un peu. Il doit aussi décider parmi plusieurs options.
So as I mentioned before, there's no clear definition or standardization on what an Article 6 governance framework is. We see that some host parties or countries are defining.
Parce que je pense qu'il y a des autres qui utilisent comme ce qu'ils appellent il y a des pays aussi, mais en réalité, ces documents qui sont publiés ne peuvent pas être comparés parce qu'ils ont différents titres. Une des choses que j'aimerais aussi dire aujourd'hui est d'essayer d'explorer et de faire en sorte que cela soit important. Pourquoi est-ce que nous devons? La première des choses,
of this governance framework to promote activity development, financing, and systems, to ensure our own country's NDC compliance and policy coordination, to support the coordination with other carbon pricing instruments, and to comply with social and environmental safeguards. But what are the main components? Like when we're really talking about the segments of what a governance framework could have, let's go into the next slide where I would like to put everything in a more concrete manner. The way we perceive an Article 6 governance framework is by these three different pillars. First, we talk about an Article 6 strategy. Second, about an Article 6 institutional framework. And lastly, basically putting everything in place by laws, regulation, or policies. Article 6 strategy, should be focusing on the priorities, identifying those priorities and those areas that governments would like to highlight and would like to address as part of their Article 6 strategy. And later on, based on that, countries can start to develop their authorization criteria and conditions. Most of these authorization criteria and conditions are to support countries on reducing as much as they can the risks, namely overselling risks. Then we have the institutional framework. So in the institutional framework, we need to start defining and understanding what are the main tasks and processes that needs to be in place. Who will be responsible for what? And do we actually need to create new departments within our ministries, or do we need to develop new governing bodies? And lastly, as I mentioned before, we need to put everything written down and create the document that will make this operational. This can be a part of a law, a regulation, or policy, and it doesn't necessarily has to be a fairly or completely new document. It can be an amendment of existing ones. And this is something that connects as well very well with some of the early lessons that we have identified as part of our work on Article 6. And as I mentioned, I call them early lessons because when we were teaming back and trying to define what are those lessons learned, well, in reality, it's such a new approach and such a new topic that very few countries have actually published and publicized their own governance framework. Some of these countries are actually now joining us today for the knowledge exchange, so it'll be great to also hear from them if they agree with this or if they will add anything else. But in a nutshell, I will call this early lessons as first, the host parties should define its framework based on their conditions, existing capabilities and resources. We need to be realistic. We're not trying to develop a state-of-the-art regulation that will not allow us to comply with it and to implement it because we don't have the people, we don't have the resources, we don't have the knowledge in order to make it happen. We need to adapt and we need to be realistic into what is it that we're putting in the table. All relevant stakeholders should be involved in the development of the Article 6 governance framework. Most importantly, the private sector and the potential activity proponents. So they are very well aware of what are the discussions, so what type of rules and conditions will be part of this governance framework. And they can also be involved in those discussions and provide their own feedback and their own point of view. This will allow as well to get the private sector buy-in and will ease our way into the actual implementation of an Article 6 activity in the future. As I mentioned before, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. The Article 6 governance framework can be based on existing capacity and resources. As I said, we can amend existing documents. We can utilize the same governing bodies, but we need to create this additional capacity and additional mandates that will make Article 6 governance operational. Most importantly, we need to create capacity both internally and externally. Internally, because we're creating new tasks, we are providing new mandates, and people internally within our governments will need to understand better what are we talking about when we're saying or when we're talking about Article 6 governance framework. What will be the authorization pathways? What type of processes will be in place? And externally as well, because we cannot design everything internally and then at the end of the day it's like, okay guys, here is the plan, implement it. And then just as Frank said, but what is Article 6 to start with? So let's create capacity also externally so we can implement Article 6 by all means the easiest and quickest way as possible, so we don't have to cope with any type of boundaries in terms of knowledge, both internal and external. And finally, importance of transparency on information and criteria. I cannot say more on this in terms of how important it is to actually having all of these processes, consultation, publications to be as transparent as public as possible. So as well, we can get some of the trust from the private sector and the society in general on why, understanding better why the country decided to be part of Article 6 and what are the benefits that will come with it. So importance of transparency on information and criteria. And lastly, to not take any more time of this session and sort of go into the more meaty parts about the discussions of the things that the country representatives have to share with us, I would like to give you a sneak peek of the work that we are doing together with the Global Green Growth Institute, with UNEP, Copenhagen Climate Center, GFA Consulting, and Communal Credit Public Consulting, KPC. These provided of funds provided by the German government. This is a project that has many levels of knowledge creation, knowledge exchange, capacity building, and so on. But at the core of it, there is what we call the toolbox. And as part of this toolbox, we're developing the initial deliverables, which are 6 guides. These 6 guides are meant for activity proponents, meaning the private sector, for governments, for a mix of both, or for basically everyone. In the case of the first guide, that we call it Increasing Innovation and Promoting Transformational Change, here we're talking about addressing both government and private actors, so we make sure that they understand the importance of increasing lasting impact. But then we start to address the issues in regards to Article 6 implementation from the government perspective, and this is where guides 2, 3, and 4 take place. The guides 2 and guides 3 in particular will be basically targeting the issue of governance framework first by talking about how to develop an Article 6 host body strategy on prioritizing opportunities and managing risks, and then on deciding the institutional roles and procedures that will come on Guide 3. Another aspect that will be addressed as well for governments is on understanding how they can interact and create proper relationships between Article 6 and existing carbon pricing instruments, such as an emissions trading system, a carbon tax, and some others. And the last part of the toolbox, at least in this initial phase, is addressed or is targeted towards the private sector and activity developers. First, by giving them a roadmap on how to navigate activity cycle and requirements on Guide 5 on developing Article 6 strategy, developing Article 6 activities. And on Guide 6, where we try to engage the private sector buyers and finance providers by giving them a good understanding of the financial and contractual models for Article 6. So with that, I will thank you for your attention, and I really look forward for the knowledge exchange section. So thank you so much, and I'll be present for the rest of the session in case you have any questions.
Thanks so much for that, really helpful. I think that gives us a really good flavour to start things off. So as we try to do always in GGGI, we will now be engaging with a panel discussion with what the situation really is on the ground in countries. So I have extremely valuable and rich panel to be able to discuss this point. And I think we have managed to successfully actually get the Zambian representative online. Great. So online, so for those who aren't familiar with me, my name is Fenella Awan, and I head carbon pricing here at GGGI. Online, joining on the panel is Dr. Duty Chibamba, who's the Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment from Zambia. Hello, Dr. Chibamba. Nice to have you online. Oh, further away, thank you. Also in
Good morning,
the room,
everybody.
Good morning. Also in the room, we are joined by Dr. Anil Jasinga, the Secretary of the Ministry of Environment from Sri Lanka. Welcome, Dr. Jasinga. And also delighted to be joined by Ms. Sandra Lindström, who is the Head of International Climate Cooperation from the Swedish Energy Agency, which is the agency tasked by the government and Kingdom of Sweden to purchase and deal with all carbon-related items. Welcome, Sandra. Thank you. Okay, so we've structured this panel in such a way that we asked everybody the same question, and I'm going to turn to each of the panel members and ask them to respond in turn to the same question, and then we have some further questions. And I will always encourage any of my panel members to ask each other questions as well, because I do feel that that will certainly aid the knowledge sharing. And as we have potential buyers and sellers represented on the panel, I think that will certainly add to the information for the audience. So first of all, I'm going to start with the main question, which is some countries are adopting a wait and see approach to Article 6 implementation. So wait until all the international rules and operational steps are finalized. But many others are taking a slightly different, more proactive approach, where they are constructing and developing their own arrangements for Article 6, knowing that these will need to be adapted over time as the details of the rule book and market norms come into place. So what I would really like to understand from each of the panel members is what is the approach that your country is taking and why? So I'm going to start with Dr. Chibamba online, please. I think we have a frozen, we have stuck. Oh, okay. While Dr. Chibamba reconnects, I will turn instead to Dr. Jasinga.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, I'm not an expert on learning curve, but for this question, basically, now when I asked my additional secretary in charge of this, area, he used to tell me that, this is still under negotiation, and it's not forthcoming, and maybe next COP. So, but I know that to some extent, there are results, right? So, so my opinion was, why not we work on what we have on the ground. So, so therefore, actually, I can say that we accelerated Article 6 actions, but of course we started somewhat late. So basically, if you wait till everything is done, then you may be too late, because if you chip in earlier, then it will be easy for you to catch up and, sort of mainstream. So, but of course, there is a new this thing, and as it was, transpired earlier by the presenter, it has to be known by across the board. And that is one weak area, because we may know to some extent, but the other stakeholders may not know anything, right? So therefore that's very important. And of course we have our problems. We have, for example, we don't have a law on Article 6, and then we don't have a framework. So what really we started off is, actually we are in the making of Climate Change Act. We will be incorporating this into Climate Change Act, but it will take time. So once again, for us to wait till we incorporate into our act, again, we push it forward. So therefore, we started off by appointing an expert team. So that expert team work on the readiness, the capacity building, and working on the framework. So of course, even without this, it doesn't say that we were not in carbon trading. Of course, voluntary carbon market has been in operation in Sri Lanka, and but then we don't know the quantities, and we don't know where these credits end up in. And so therefore we need institutional framework. And also Sri Lanka signed up with Japan, JCM, and recently the joint committee, of course, gave the green light for the first project. It's 50-50 investments. So, and then also we signed a MOU with Singapore, and next we'll have to sign with them on the agreement, but then we wait for their readiness support as well. So which we wanted to have it beforehand, but they wanted to sign the MOU. But then now we say, okay, let's go. I'm sure Fonella, the GGGI, is also waiting to support us on using this readiness from Singapore. And then, of course, South Korea. We are waiting to sign with South Korea. So therefore, I mean, this the compliance market, the bilateral agreements we have signed, and we are moving ahead. But then we need across the board framework for things to be put in line. So therefore, I think I'm sure GGGI will support us very much. And even yesterday with DG, I had a good discussion. So I think for time being, that should be enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jasinga. And yes, of course, we are very much looking forward. And I hope at the end of the whole session this evening, I might be able to tell you a little bit more about the carbon transaction facility that we hope will be able to assist with work on readiness in countries such as Sri Lanka. Okay, I think, yes, I can see a blink. So I think we have Dr. Chibamba. So may I now pass to you, because I'm desperately excited for you to be able to share some of the news. I saw the great dancing display from last week in Lusaka. So I think we're all interested to hear, why was there dancing in Lusaka? So Dr. Chibamba.
Thank you so much. Apologies, I was off briefly due to technical issues, but good to see all of you out there. So back in Lusaka, we basically have a similar story with Sri Lanka. We do not have a law at the moment on carbon trading. However, we are working on the acts for carbon trading, and hopefully it should be out the first quarter of 2024. And however, we have not taken a wait and see approach to Article 6. We knew that Article 6 was in the oven being baked, and it would take a bit of time. So we went ahead and took chances with voluntary carbon projects. We do have a number of players that we've authorized to trade in carbon. The main sticking point has been the benefit sharing mechanism. A lot of local communities have complained that the process is not transparent. So what we've done, we are doing a pilot project in one of our provinces where we have taken a jurisdictional approach. So currently we do have a draft benefit sharing mechanism that was agreed upon by the local communities together with the investors. Basically, it's 15% to the government and project implementation unit, 30% to the investor, and 55% to the local communities. It's still being debated, but at least we have some framework that we can work with. We do not have a carbon trading framework, but back in December 2022, we did issue what we called interim guidelines for carbon trading. So we've received support from the Spark 6 project. So working with this project, we've gone back to those interim guidelines to try and enhance them. And indeed, last week, we are launching the enhanced version of these guidelines, and that is what the dancing was all about. So basically, what we're trying to enhance in the enhanced guidelines is the issue of the criteria with regards to environmental integrity, sustainable development, and ambition raising. The other aspect that we're enhancing is around detailing information on financial additionality and contribution to the achievement of sustainable development goals. The other one is to provide a comprehensive set of robust and transparent indicators against which the projects have to perform and be evaluated. And then the other one is the covering entire project development process from application to approval, as well as provide the templates for concept notes and mitigation activity development documents. So those are some of the enhancements that we are making. But remember, this is only phase one of this process. We still have other things pending, like the MRV and the registry, which is very crucial in as far as monitoring and taking stock of what is happening, whether we're doing the right thing is concerned. We are hopeful that maybe the MRV, because we have already started the process of developing the MRV system, and we are hoping that maybe by the end of this year, we'll be somewhere where we could say, okay, the system is in place. So really, basically, this is where we are, but I'm really happy and interested to hear that Sri Lanka is talking to Japan, Singapore, and South Korea to see if they can do some bilateral agreements. We are also willing to jump in the fray and explore those opportunities and see what we can get out of them. I think for now, that's the good news from Lusaka. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Chibamba. I think the idea of this is the first phase. There's more to come, the MRV and the registries. And I agree, it's essentially important to ensure that there is robust, high integrity and transparent transactions happening. However, I'm encouraged very much to see that, first of all, tell the private sector what they can go away and have a think about and start developing. And we all know it's going to take a few years before there's a project on the ground that needs monitoring. So I think it's the right way to go about it and the right phase to bring in first. And I think as well in the negotiations, the centralized registry that is meant to be coming in under Article 6.4 will be very valuable and could, we don't know yet, but could actually save countries a lot of time, effort, and capacity. So we want to see how we can coordinate with that as well. But the Spark program consortia are there supporting you and will continue to do so for the next 3 years. So thank you very much for that. Let me turn now. So there's a bit of a flavor of the sell side and how two countries are both, in fact, taking a look. We've got to actually get on with something. We can't wait until everything is in place. So let us now turn to our third panelist, who has a very different side and a different view from the buy side. So if I can pass to Ms. Lindstrom. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernanda. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this panel. Very pleased. First of all, before I answer to the question, I thought I'll take this opportunity to just say a few words about why Sweden is engaged in Article 6 and the motivations for our engagement. So Sweden has a net zero goal by 2045, and the plan is to reduce the emissions as much as possible in Sweden. But if we can go all the way to zero, there's a flexibility for us to use supplementary measures, and one of the supplementary measures is Article 6. So that's one of the reasons why we engage, but also we believe that this is an instrument that can push the climate ambition because it allows us all to finance mitigation actions that won't be that would have not happened otherwise. And also we believe that this is an opportunity to push investments that would not have happened to the global south, which I think is very important. So Sweden started in 2018, so that's 5 years from now, and it has been difficult. At that time, there were not very many countries engaged. The rules were very the Paris Agreement was very new. We didn't have the rules in place. But the reason why we did that is because we believe that there is benefits of being early in the market. We believe that we can shape and influence the development of the mechanism, and also with regards to the reasons that I mentioned before, that this is an opportunity for for the climate community to push investments and so on. And so to your question, Fenella, on the approach that we're taking. So we have been early and we have three memorandum of understanding that we have signed. It's with Nepal, Dominican Republic, and Ghana, and we hope that we will be able to have more partner countries in the nearest future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I think it's nice to hear it's not just the sellers who are saying it's really difficult. It's not easy to set this up, and I think those of you who feel that as sellers it's an awful lot of work and it's very new, take heart that it's tough for the buyers as well. There's an awful lot of new regulation that needs to be done for them too. I'd like to actually maybe focus on that a little bit more, because what help is needed and exactly where is it needed to help you move on quicker, faster, scale up? So if I can turn to each of you again and ask briefly, what are some of the greatest challenges you faced in setting up or starting on this road of governance frameworks? So I'm thinking things like the staff skills, understanding or knowledge around Article 6, the workload, the resources, the technical infrastructure to even do MRV. What has been some of the most difficult things that you've had? So maybe if I can switch it around a bit and start perhaps with you, Sandra, and sort of see where's been your biggest challenge?
Well, thank you for the question, Fenella. So with regards to the framework, so we have partly the framework in place. So we don't have the full framework yet. What we have in place so far is that we have a clear mandate for the Swedish Energy Agency to engage with countries to develop Article 6 programs, and also to engage with actors from both public and private sector to finance Article 6 programs that would be compliant to Article 6. What we don't have in place yet is the framework for how the authorization and the transfer, how that process looks like, who will be responsible for those processes. And I think I heard Benjamin before here mention that let's not invent the wheel again. So what we are doing in Sweden is we are looking to how do we do it when we were engaged in the Kyoto Protocol's clean development mechanism. So what we have done is we have looked into that and see what did work, and what didn't work, and we try to learn from those lessons. And now we're trying to see how we can organize that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandra. I think, Dr. Jasinga, it's the first time we meet in person, but we have had a few virtual calls, and there I remember you saying, we want to get on with this, but we're not sure what we're doing at the moment. You have an expert team, as you say, but clearly they're having to cover so many things and are very stretched. Where are you finding the particular pinch points at the moment that are sort of holding you back from getting out of the starting gates?
Well, as you said, we have certain experts, and they know stuff to a certain extent. But since this is new still globally, I think we need the assistance in terms of capacity building, technology, and financing. But on the other hand, we are very much eager because we don't simply consider this as mitigatory effort, because if you take Sri Lanka, or for that matter Zambia, we are in the tropical belt, and I think for the green transition, the Article 6 may be useful among other things, because of course our emissions are just negligible, 0.03%. So, but then we don't think that way. So therefore, we need to somehow, get on to this. And the thing is, now that Article 6.4 is still, long way to go. I think I can see if with all these experts, COP finds it difficult to come to certain conclusions. So you can think about a country like Sri Lanka or Zambia for that matter. So I think what I see is now we are going ahead with our the framework, but certainly in that framework there will be a lot of gaps, I can expect. So that is, I think that is where you the GGGI or any other organization must chip in and work with us, and also updates of it's getting updated. These articles are getting updated, and also if we really don't get this right, we can be victims sometimes. The transparency is an issue. So there are a lot of external, the pressure, and even internally you can, come under pressure. So therefore, I think getting the framework right is very important, and that is where we need the real support, But of course, we can work with our experts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jasinga. And I think that brings up a couple of really interesting areas. First of all, it's not that you need a one-size-fits-all package of technical assistance. It's no, we can do this bit by ourselves. We have our own experts. We know and we're confident in this area, but I need someone to fill in that gap or just help us on that bit. We're not sure how to do that section. And secondly, the benefit sharing. And I think, Dr. Chijwamba, you've already mentioned this once with regard to, I think it's in relation to the FCPF and the, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use these terrible acronyms when half the people on the line won't have a clue what I'm talking about, but the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility by the World Bank, which is a results-based payment measured in terms of volume of carbon. And I know that there has been some recent press, but everybody is keen to do it. But how do you set the rules in place for benefit sharing, and how do you know what's the right level? So I think maybe with that in mind, if I can turn to you and say, where have you found the most challenges and the most issues with setting up how to trade in all carbon markets, not just under Article 6? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. So we seem to have similar challenges because, first of all, climate change is a very knowledge-intensive arena. Now, when we even come to carbon, carbon is abstract. No one can see it. So we do have challenges around skills. And by skills here, we're talking of maybe having one or two real carbon experts around whom other experts can come and converge and see how they support one another. So we need capacity building in terms of soft skills. Our focal point organization for all things carbon is the Zambia Environmental Management Agency. So there again, we do not really have adequate skill sets that can move this process forward. But our biggest challenge is the infrastructure, the infrastructure to house this registry, both hardware and software. At the moment, I would say that is our biggest challenge, because if we have to have a working registry, then we need those servers, we need those computers, we need that regular update of the software, like my colleague from Sri Lanka has mentioned. So at the moment, the biggest bind that we are finding ourselves in is the infrastructure. How do we put up that infrastructure? And of course, that goes with financial resources. This issue of developing a registry has been on the cards for some years, but we've not made real progress. So it will be around infrastructure and skills. And of course, we are grateful Spark 6 is doing quite a lot in terms of trying to help to up our skills around this subject matter. So today, for me, what I see as the biggest problem is the infrastructure, the servers that we need to create this registry. And this is why we are hoping this pilot we are doing in Eastern Province under the World Bank. You know, if you're talking of a central registry, this is basically what we are trying to do under the jurisdictional approach. We are saying, who are the players in this province? So we take account of all the players, we bring them together, each one of them contribute their credits, and then those credits are sold as a block. And then each investor gets their share based on how much they contribute. So for us, it's basically infrastructure, financial resources, and skill set development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chibamba. And I think extremely valid point, the infrastructure, the hardware, software that you speak about. I can talk about a very old story from the Clean Development Mechanism, where I was working for a commercial bank and we actually had to buy the Department of Climate Change in one country a printer so that they could actually print out the host country letter of approval for us. So there is a real need for either electronic versions or something to make it easy, or the infrastructure provided. And I think it becomes more complicated as we go on. I do desperately want to ask questions from the room, but I'm getting a very severe look from the corner saying your time is up. But I think that was Frank laying out what needs to be my next year's business plan at the beginning, rather than his wish list. So I will actually turn to the room very cheekily and just quickly ask if anybody in the room has a question, or if anyone has seen anything. I don't know, I think there's a couple of people watching the chat online, but are there any questions from the room just about the Article 6 governance frameworks? And or do any of the panelists have a question for each other about it? If there's not, then we can happily move to the break and move on to the second panel. I don't see any questions in the room. Anything? No? Okay, then I will just say thank you very, very much to our panelists. For me, it's a real privilege to get, buyers and sellers around the table to actually have the conversation about all the good bits and all the bad bits. Well, challenges that will be overcome, I'd like to see it as. On how we can rapidly move forward. And I think, yes, there may be some phone numbers and email addresses noted down around the place. So thank you very, very much. If you'd like to put your hands together for our panel. Thank you. And I'm so glad, Dr. Chibamba, that we got the internet working in the end. So thank you very, very much for joining us so early from Lusaka.
Thank you so much.
So thanks everyone for sticking with us. We're going to now start the second part of our session today. This session is going to be about the topic of quote unquote leveling the playing field. So what we saw in the previous discussion is that host country governments are required to do a lot more under the Paris period than they were during their Kyoto period. And there are a lot of different skill sets, policies, but also technical infrastructure that was raised that is required in this new era of carbon trading. So, one of the topics or ways that we can help to lay to create more equity between buyers and sellers in the market under these new conditions is to discuss how sort of the developing countries or how can benefit from resources from buyers that could help them set up those systems and build those capacities. So Fenella, please take it from here.
Thank you very much, Marshall. Again, excellent emceeing. Right, well, thank you. Luckily, everyone else has changed, so that's the interesting bit of the panel to watch rather than me. The marvelous thing is that, again, we have so many countries here to talk, representing both sides of the market, both buyers and sellers. So I am joined on the panel by Hari Sharma, who is the Undersecretary in the Ministry of Forest and Environment from Nepal. And next to him, I also have Mr. Chuk Paris, the Undersecretary of State for the Ministry of Environment from Cambodia. Thank you. And next to him, a very dear friend and regular visitor to GGGI, Mr. Paik Dida, or Dida Gardera, who is a Senior Advisor for Connectivity, Service Development and Natural Resources within the Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs in Indonesia. And I think the length of the title goes with the complexity of the country in size and topography. And last but absolutely not least, bookending the panel here is Ms. Guri Storas, who is the Deputy Director General within the Ministry of Climate and Environment from Norway. So with that, same process as before, we have given all of the panelists a question to try and shape their intervention around and give us an idea of what the challenges are and what they are doing with regard to leveling the playing field. And if I can just give a tiny bit of context, what do we mean by leveling the playing field? Some of you who've been watching and following Article 6 work at GGGI over the past couple of years may well remember a survey that we carried out in 2022, where we spoke to all our members and we said, are you interested in doing trades under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement? And they said, generally the answer was yes, but. And the but was around the idea of, we don't know how, we don't know what's needed, we don't have the capacity, and also very importantly, we don't feel it's an equal bargaining table. The buyers have all the information, the buyers know more than us, the buyers are more skilled than us, the buyers have done this before and we haven't in some cases. So the leveling up of the playing field for us means ensuring that all sides to a transaction have equal access to information, have an equal chance to learn and understand about the trade they may be getting into, and are supported in doing any transaction by organizations such as GGGI, but not exclusively ourselves at all. So if I may then, I would like to turn, Hari, perhaps to you first, with the question, under the clean development mechanism, which was the trading mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol, the technical, legal assistance and capacity building took too long to arrive. And many countries either did not fully benefit from the market or were not capable of engaging with buyers on carbon on an equal footing. And it was generally due to lack of technical expertise in carbon transactions. So what do we need to do to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes again? How do we do it better under Article 6? Over to you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. What experience we gained from the studying room on the Kyoto Protocol? We faces many challenges, especially talking about the policy. We have to internalize the protocol into our policy framework, into our act and regulation. And first things, before internalizing the policy, first we had to aware, or we had to sensitize the policy bodies. Unless and until the political body gets sensitized, the program will not be on mainstream. So first thing, we have to sensitize the political body. And secondly, about the sharing of benefit, okay, from carbon trade, the benefited, it means beneficiaries who is contributing for the reduction of emission, that have to be, it means contributed. It means government have to be allocated certain fund to the ground beneficiaries. For that, we feel some problem like benefit sharing mechanism. We allocated around 15% to the beneficiaries who contributed for the reduction of emission. For that, we face the problem. And also talking about the institutional mechanism. We do not have priority list. It means we had only negative and positive list, but among that list, we do not have any priority list. It means looking after the nature of project and size of the project, we had to face the problem. So we had to be made the national priority program with priority ranking in each sector. We realize that one. And also for the operational manual to implement the project, we had to be made new joint coordination committee. We realize that one. To overcome from the dispute settlement and other force measures reason. These are the things we have to be we have to be improved in the coming project. Okay, thank you. This is my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry. Okay, may I next pass to Mr. Chuk Paris to ask from the Cambodian point of view, what can we do better to help set up under Article 6?
Okay, thank you for question and very good morning, very good evening to ladies and gentlemen.
Where you are, half the people online, don't worry, it's morning for them.
Going to other people, from the far online. Regarding the Article 6, Cambodia first, government are supporting very much on the carbon neutralities, on the climate change actions. It is a government positions that we have a strong commitment on that. That's why, we just released the so-called long-term strategy for carbon neutrality by 2050. And we also have the climate change strategic planning, and NDC has been submitted already. So it means that, the policy, the commitment from the government are in place, I would say. And the second point is the good thing to Cambodia is we have a DP, the partner, closely cooperate with us. Cambodia, we are working hand in hand to tackle the climate change impacts, both mitigation and adaptations. The challenge that I see just a process, the process is a bit take time. that I would say that if we can simplify the process, make the tool, all the tool a bit simplified, and then take not much time to take. I would say it is good to us to liberate, to do the carbon markets, and then to respond to climate change efficiently. So far, GGI, thank you to GGI for helping us to develop the operational manual. And then I would say that this tool could be used as our, technical and legal assistant in order to inform the buyer, potential buyer, to come to us, to buy, to work with us on the carbon trading. So you may know that NDC, we have several sectors. We have forest, we have energy, transport, and waste. So that we may pick up which sector that could be do the pilots program or project that use the operational manual assisted by the GGI to be as a pilot, and then if it is workable, successful, and then we can expand our pilots project to across the country if possible. So I would say that the challenge is a process. It's a process, and then I would say also that if we can simplify the tool, all the technical and legal tool a bit, don't too much, don't, how to say, requirements so much, so that some country like Cambodia, we are sometimes some requirement we cannot make it. So make it simple, reasonable, and then can accept by all the party, by the implementer, and then by the buyer as well together. Otherwise, if very strict, too strict in terms of condition or requirement or principle, it is difficult for us to to follow. That's why we have to understand each other. We have to talk and then work together in the proper way, simple way, not make it complicated. It is my suggestion, and thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And it's funny, if traders sat in the negotiations, I think it would all be done and dusted a lot quicker, but not everyone would be happy maybe. So it's a tricky balance of sitting in a negotiating room and trying to make everybody happy often has the negative consequence of making things more complicated. And you point out very validly that this slows it down. You maybe can't comply with the regulations, or it's too expensive, or some projects. And I commend the way, as you've described, that Cambodia is looking at multiple different markets, voluntary market, compliance market under Article 6, look at different sectors, pilot, test it, does it work? If it does, carry on. So I think that's certainly a good idea, and see if it fits first. So next, if I can pass to Dida Gardera of the CMEA in Indonesia. Pak Dida, can you share where are you now, and how are we going to make Article 6 work in Indonesia?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me again for sharing and exchange knowledge, information. Yeah, very fortunate Indonesia benefit as well for CDM in the Protocol Kyoto regime, even not as smart as Indonesian size in terms of population or the territories. So that's why right now we preparing all the modalities from the regulation. We have already in the law level the highest regulation in Indonesia. We have set in tax law about the carbon tax, and we engaging with many countries partner and international organization partner, including Triple GI, for exercising all the instrument of carbon pricing. We are doing the voluntary carbon market. We just launched the carbon exchange a month ago. And then now with Triple GI and Norwegian government and also Swedish government, we are exercising Article 6.2. And hopefully if in Dubai establish the governance for Article 6.4, we can also exercise this Article 6.4. But yeah, and even in our region, together colleagues from Cambodia and other countries' colleagues, we are developing the carbon neutrality for ASEAN. We've tried to find the commonalities and also how we can accelerate our target together as a region. Yeah, hopefully with all engagement and exercising, I think we can have a mutual benefit either for the seller, such Indonesia, and also for potential buyer like Norwegian or other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Dida. And I think it's certainly, well, if I'm to believe the CNBC advert I have recently been finding on my television in the mornings, it's Indonesia has potential for 75% of the global carbon credits. So yeah, I think the voluntary market and exchange is certainly doing a very good job. And there's an awful lot of activity happening in the country, and it is extremely complex to try and work together a carbon tax, a voluntary scheme, where there's maybe an offsetting against your tax in your own country, plus international trading, plus a potential ETS. So many different instruments. And you may have caught that one of the toolbox guidebooks will actually speak to how do different carbon pricing instruments work together, or work in parallel, if not together. And I think they will be turning to Indonesia for learning and case studies of what to do, what not to do. So I'm going to turn to Guri now, but maybe a slightly different question for you, actually, as you said, on the other end of the market. So one thing that we've found as we go around the world, and even governments that say, yes, we've got our governance framework in place, and then it's, well, that fits one particular situation for one type of buyer, but not others. So at the moment, there's all a multiplicity of buyers approaching countries, each requesting slightly different rules to fit their buying requirements. And how approving and authorizing mitigation outcomes at host country level should look. So how do you see the development of this particular challenge, and what could buyers do from their side to alleviate this problem? Kostia, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. To be honest, I think we'll see this problem for some time to come. The market under Article 6 is, as we've been talking about, new, and many countries are still in their piloting phase. Part of the challenge might come from variations in the program designs, where some buyers are interested in project level cooperation and others on sectoral or policy level. However, as this market is maturing, I think it is important for buyers to coordinate among themselves, to try to align requirements when it comes to domestic rules of approving and authorizing mitigation outcomes. And there is already progress on that. Norway and other countries are coordinating already. But in this process, it is very important for buyer countries, or I think it should be important place for buyer countries to be attentive to seller countries' needs and their experiences when designing programs. And from Norway's perspective, the way we look at this, it's we're open to several ways of authorizing mitigation outcomes. I think countries are differently set up. They have different ministries, different responsibilities, like under different names, and it should really be up to the seller country to do that. For us, it doesn't really matter. What matters, though, is that you follow the Article 6 rules and that is transparent. So that's what we require, that we know who is authorizing, but we will not say this and this entity has to do it and it has to be done in this exact way.
Perfect, thank you, Guri. And I think, yes, it's a balance. I think there are two, as long as both those approaches are done, I think that is what we're calling leveling the playing field and having a conversation equally. I fear all buyers in the room together just deciding amongst themselves is maybe going to create a further challenge, as Mr. Paris said, with complexity, because you will automatically go for the most conservative. Out of a discussion of a room of 10 people, it's go for the safest, and that's usually got more complexity. So a challenge there, and how do we make it simple? So there are, I have a follow-up question, which I will come back to, but I desperately want to speak to an old friend, actually. So I know that there is an old colleague of ours called Stefan Gill, who used to head our program with Sweden and Nepal, who is now with Carbon Limits, and apparently still, hopefully, has his hand up. So is there a way that we can, I have no idea whether this will work, so bear with us a second, Stefan. Can we get him online to ask a question? Okay, I think Stefan, fire away with your question. Oops, no, we're not hearing you. Not hearing. Shouldn't it? Oh, did we lose him?
Hello, I'm very sorry to interrupt the meeting. I think that was a mistake. I didn't actually have my hand up.
Okay, clearly far too keen, Stefan. It's too early in Ireland. You should still be sitting here in Seoul, where it's coming on 7 o'clock. Okay.
Very sorry to interrupt.
No, don't worry at all. Okay, then. Okay, another question that came in online, and I'd maybe put this to Cambodia and Norway to get two different views. You're saying, Mr. Paris, about the demystifying and making the Article 6 frameworks less complicated. Can you give a couple of examples where it's, you found it's particularly, oh goodness, that's another thing, and it's a real challenge. And likewise, Guri, any way you can in those conversations you're having amongst buying countries, how we can maybe look at trying to simplify Article 6. So maybe Mr. Parris.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, President. Article 6, Article 6 mentioned clearly is about the 3 approaches. One's on the public and private sectors, and number 2, G2Gs, and number 3 is about the emission for the global emission. It is payment CCC. There are three approaches. To me, for the last one, result-based payment is a bit complicated because of it's not easy to coordinate with the 187 country. It's not easy, it's a nature. It's the nature. It's not easy to talk. That's why I would choose the first one first as a pilot. As a pilot, as our approach, result voluntary carbon market for REDD+ projects. We doing the REDD+ project since 2016, and then we got the first sale from Disney World. It is, change Cambodia from, how to say, the chopping tree for revenue, and now we can keeping tree for revenue. This one's a paradigm shift for Cambodia. That, the government of Cambodia, we are proud of that. But it is the first time that since 2016 that we can, move to the positive way. So that, we're still seeing that the voluntary carbon market for REDD+ still workable. That's why we pursue. In the long run, if we see that the G2G is good enough, so that we can jump into the G2G because we want to expand as well our program and projects. Now in Cambodia, we have a pilot project with Singapore on that part. G2G, we're using the operational manual as is by the GGI. That we try to pilot, to test the project, but with the cook stove, the energy side, even is it work? Yes, it's workable, and then we can expand it. So I would say is that the complicated things is within the Article 6 on the result-based payment. So many assistants, Cambodia, we have UN REDD program, we have a FCPF program, phase 1 and 2, but still talking negotiation. We don't see any investment project in place. This one is our problem. That's why I would say that if we can, make it efficiently, cutting time, because Article 6 starting in Paris Agreement on climate change since 2015 till now, 8 years already, but still talking, and then mobilize funding $100 billion a year, never happened. It is. I'm sorry that I'm straight to the point. That's why we have to how to say it, reduce the complexity, reduce time, and then mobilize funding so that climate change action can be done. Otherwise, you see now, more severe in terms of climate change impact, right? Flood. Cambodia, we got a severe flood, severe drought, and then storm, storms so heavy. It is, loss and damage a lot in the country. If we pursue, if we just talking and then no action, how come in the future? The climate change, global warming is higher and higher. It is our disaster in the future if we don't, starting now fastly. So it is depend on the multilateral talking, how to cutting the process, simplify the process, to make things done first, done fastly, done efficiently. It is the point that I would like to raise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Honestly, you fired up the inner banker in me of just let's get on with it and do a trade. And I must hold myself back. certainly. So Guri, I think quickly you must talk me down from that ledge. But over to you.
Well, I was planning to have a kind of try to have a positive approach to your question, saying, well, it is challenging, but that is part of the reason why my team find it so interesting to work on this, because you get a new challenge and you're like, okay, a new problem. How do we solve this? And in dialogue with partners. But I think Mr. Paris here had a really good point. We have to have action now. It is urgent. We don't have time for too many detours. I think Mr. Paris also said a key word here, and that is piloting. I think even though we are in a rush, we shouldn't make it too difficult for ourselves, making the projects too big from the very beginning. Norway has been engaged in various piloting efforts since 2016, and we're still saying that we're in this piloting phase, which I think we will probably be for some time to come still. Another important aspect is, of course, capacity building, and that is kind of what we're talking about, leveling the playing field. The capacity building also for ourselves, as we said, it is challenging also for us. But I think for Norway, like since we've been engaged in this since 2016, the capacity building has been important, readiness assistance, and to try to build up all these systems that we've been talking about.
Super, thank you very much, Guri. And yes, one note on piloting, and I think you'll agree, both of you will agree with me, is it doesn't mean that we're doing something tiny. It just means we're doing it for the first time, and we may not do it the same way every time afterwards. So it's the first try it and see. So to my mind, that's almost like a learning and doing approach of there's no way we're going to be able to there's no way we will have remembered everything. So we might just as well have a go, and then we'll work out what we forgot. And if we didn't need it in the first place, then okay, we don't need it going forward either. So I think that's very valid. And the capacity building, and I think, Guri, thank you for being honest that the buyers also are finding, that they need the capacity built as well. And in fact, we had a very interesting time. The end of last year, we had someone from a buyer country with us for a short while, and there was something came up in the team here with our team in GGGI, and it was one of those questions where the rules had said you have option 1, 2, or 3, but there's no answer. It's like whichever one you like, really. So we said, well, what should we recommend? What should we say to countries? If you do it this way, that's the benefit, that's the positive, that's the negative. And if you do it that way, that's positive, that's the negative. So how do we explain this to countries we're supporting? And then literally there was nothing to refer to. So it meant 10 of us sat in a room with them and said, okay, how do you reckon we should go about this one? And the team literally brainstormed it because there are no right answers. And so we came up with some thoughts on it. Afterwards, they said, that was great. Just there's no real answer and you're just working it out at this stage. But yeah, there are just showing how early it is for everybody in this market. So I want to turn to maybe Harry and Pakdida, if I may turn to the two of you and just ask one last question, which is, how can leveling the playing field in terms of capacity for market participation benefit you as a seller country? So when it comes to, rather than the amorphous blob that is capacity building, what are the specific things that you're thinking, gosh, if we had someone who could help us with that, or if we had more people who understood this, what is the particular area where you think that would help you do more in the market sooner? Harry, if I turn to you first.
Thank you, Fenella. regarding the capacity building, first we have to go by mapping, stakeholder mapping. We will be the potential MOPA signing party. And also, we already talked about the government stakeholder. We are mainly focusing on the government stakeholder only, but we have to go for the private stakeholder mapping also. So we have to first make sector-wide private entity assessment. It means baseline survey we have to be done. Then we can go by potential project from the private sector. That will be more effective, because government role only to enabling role, only to facilitate, only to monitor. But project have to be implemented by the private sector. So we have to go by sectoral assessment of private sector. Which sector or which private sector is willing to do the project. And also for the capacity development of especially we are focusing to develop the capacity of government service only by this time. But first thing what I experienced by now is always until we build the capacity of legislator, it means parliamentary body, they will not sensitize the cases of market or sensitize the opportunities. Until unless they get the sensitization, we will not make any law, any regulation. So the things will not be coming in implementation. So these are the point. And also we have to focus for the capacity development of it means internal consultant. It means to make the project proposal, we have to build the capacity of it means in-house consultant. It means regional, not only regional and international, but we have to create the platform for the project designing from the national private body. It means consultant. Okay, these are the points. Thank you.
Wow. So that's our shopping list. Pretty clear there. Thank you. All valid. Yeah. Unless you understand, unless you have the project proponents understanding what they can do, it doesn't make much sense just writing down a report that says you can do green hydrogen if there are no project developers who can actually develop a green hydrogen project. And the wider government, yes, you're trying to put in legislation. If the Ministry of Legal doesn't understand, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs hasn't got a clue what Article 6 is, it's going to be very difficult to get that legislation. And as you say, the evaluators and the project proposal writers within government. So, Hadida, your thoughts on this as well? Would you agree? Would you add to the list?
Yeah, yeah, capacity building is a continuous process. I think that we have to not only for the seller, also we mentioned for the buyer as well. They need to develop the common understanding. That is not, yeah, of course, it's not easy. Like for example, we have experience for result-based payment more than 10 years, but after that, after we have find the tune, right now we are running 4 schemes for RD Plus. One, of course, with Norway, and the other with World Bank. There is 2 by CF, SCPF, and also the others through GCF. This is a long process. And for Article 6, let's say the tricky one is about the corresponding adjustment. Yeah, since all countries have their own target, their own NDC, so we have to securing the how we can achieve the NDC. And then if we can spare some potential emission reduction, it could be it can be sold to other countries. And also the carbon pricing, the Article 6 of Paris Agreement is important to also to support the investment for mitigation actions. I think to some extent can contribute for the project become feasible. Of course, capacity is very important in terms of technology, in terms of the process the carbon trade. But yeah, Indonesia choose for doing learning by improvement. So we do we try to do all the option of carbon pricing instrument, but of course there are many room for improvement. So that's why we need the capacity building, knowledge and information exchange, and build the common understanding.
Thank you, Patsy. Learning and improving rather than learning by doing. I think I'm gonna quote that one next time. Yes, extremely important to be able to get around all the stakeholders. So I'm going to quickly, because we are very nearly at time, I'm just going to ask if my colleagues who I know are sitting there behind laptops have got a presentation ready to share on screen. If you could do that, please. Because what I'm going to just lastly show, which hopefully is now going to answer all the questions that you and all the challenges that you've raised and we've raised in both of the panels. So how is GGGI planning to address this? And I will show in 5 minutes flat how we are planning on doing this. And I have to say, I have been in Tokyo for a couple of days, so this was prepared for me, which is not very common, which means I have no idea which slides are going to come up. So you'll have to excuse me as I have a look at them. So if we can whisk the first slide, please. There we are. Okay, so this is about why we are planning on creating a facility called the Carbon Transaction Facility. Why? To address the challenge of the uneven playing field. What is the uneven playing field? There's a high participation burden, which, like the effects of climate change, tends to weigh more heavily on countries with smaller governments, smaller capacity, and less experience in carbon markets. Also, it's to help challenge where there is low confidence for approaching the market, where there is this knowledge exchange. So if we're going to learn and improve, how are you going to know when another country's done something that you want to learn from? Or do you have to do everything and learn everything yourself, which seems a little silly? And then the uneven participation in the transaction design itself. So how the pricing or the timing of a deal may be set up has historically been quite often the remit or been proposed by the buy side. Next slide. So what we have created is a multi-fund facility. That sounds like a very complicated word, but it's just a number of pots, if we describe it like that, which might make it sound a bit easier. So there's a big pot called Article 6 Readiness Facility, into which we will have multiple contributors. These contributors will have multiple purposes. Some of them will be ITMO buying countries. They will all be country governments. There's no private sector at the moment. So it will be buyers of ITMOs, but it may also be countries with overseas development aid, ODA, that want to concentrate on opening up markets without actually being a buyer themselves. So there will be multiple participants in that readiness facility. And that readiness facility is meant to answer things that you've raised exactly on this panel, like being flexible, fill in the gaps, don't expect it to be cookie cutter. Everybody having the capacity, not only in a very wide sense, but also in a more tailored sense, if there are particular project sectors that apply to only a few countries, mangroves, rice growing. You know, we don't need to take rice growing to a country that doesn't have rice as a main crop, or reduction of methane there. Out of that readiness facility, our two main aims are countries, both buyers and sellers, but quite strongly sellers, the GGGI member and partner countries, will have had their capacity built. They will be feeling more empowered. They will feel more informed about what's going on in the markets. They will feel that they can confidently enter the market. And also project idea notes, or as we're calling them, mitigation action idea notes. And those can be picked up by one of multiple carbon trust funds. And these will be funds that have contributions from particular ITMO buyers, whether that is I mean, you've mentioned them all here today, Sweden, Norway, Singapore, could be Korea, could be others. And they will then say, oh, actually that matches with what I'm looking to buy. Here again, an evening up of the playing field, instead of the buyers approaching the sellers that they wish to trade with, this is the seller having access to multiple buyers and choosing which the seller wants to trade with, if there are multiple buyers interested. Next slide. So just back to the readiness a moment, the aim is to reach as many countries as we can with as much readiness support as we can. So we'll start from that sort of wide, if you think of it like a filter, so you start wider at the top on sharing written material. So this could be a trade and improve, it could be a do and improve. You can write a report on that, say, oh goodness, don't do it this way, we learned this lesson, or this was fantastic, we did this pilot and it really works and we're going to scale it up now. Then you go down to something that's a little more targeted, where you might be sitting several countries in a room, a bit like this, but maybe a little more intense than a panel, for a day or two to say, what are you doing? How far have you got? Where is your challenge? And sharing the knowledge. I'm always fascinated every time we get our member countries together with how much everyone enjoys talking and sharing knowledge on the experiences around, whether it's carbon trading or whether it's climate policy. It's always great to see that. And then right at the bottom, you might have that very bespoke, okay, you need help on your legislation or your decree or something else. Next slide. So then the idea is how we move from the readiness to the trust, to the multiple trust funds, is that we'll have these project idea notes coming out and we'll have what we call a matchmaking process. Now, if a buyer or someone who has contributed to a fund also has got a direct relationship with a country, but wants that onward trade, just the MRV and management of that trade to be run through their trust fund and GGGI, they're able to bring those in as well. So this is, the idea is it goes from all the way from A to Z, from the preparation, from the learning, all the way to the trade completed and the ITMO delivered corresponding adjustment done. Next slide. And there we are. I think I got through that without actually getting one that I didn't recognize. So thank you very much for that, Benjamin. So that gives you a little idea as to, I think we are creating and that we're hoping we are currently speaking with potential contributors and hoping to be able to announce the first contributions before the end of the year. And with that, I am finished. And I don't know, Marsha, if I pass to you for a closing. Yeah, so it says in one piece of paper.
Yes, thank you, Vanilla, and thanks everybody for the great discussion. So there are actually not many more additional questions online. And what there was answered in your presentation, actually. So yeah, are there any questions in the room or anything else anyone would like to ask? All right. Yes, it is 7 o'clock here in Seoul, so we will give everyone a break and wrap the session here. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and day.